Okay, man. It's like violent. Go ahead and send the playlist so we can.
This is the famous song that the Miss Samoa dances.
100.
Is this on Facebook too?
I'll find Chee-hoo! Hello, everyone, and welcome. Turn my camera back on. Well, there's a little glitch there because I think I was using a lot of bandwidth. But yeah, welcome to our last and final class. Bittersweet ending. But no, we're still going to be around too. More details to come. But yeah, just really want to just thank our two amazing therapists and just our sponsors, the Office of Equity and Community Partnerships here at King County, who provides us the funding. We will be reaching out to them, looking to see what we can do next. We also have Family Ways, communities, pregnancy support program, working with BIPOC families ages 0 to 5 with BIPOC peer support group members. And also Waves with Shoreline Community College. And finally, Voices of the South Pacific, a Pacific Islander broadcasting platform for our Pacifica folks. With that, I'm going to pass it off to the amazing Sala and Scarlett, or I can say Scarlett and Sala. There's no who's better. Just want to throw that out there.
It don't matter. We all on the
Thank
same
you,
team.
Seely. Right. Yes, the winning team that is, by the way. Right. But welcome, welcome. Good evening, everyone. It is our final community conversation for 2023. Wow. I feel like we ought to take some time to reflect back on everything we did in 2023, but we don't have the time for that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get us started. But gosh, it has been such an honor and an amazing ride to be able to do this work alongside some amazing people, getting the information out there for our communities in regards to mental health. So thank you everyone that's joining in tonight, or if you're going to be tuning in later on. We really appreciate whether this is your first time tuning in or if you have been consistently tuning in. I see you, Vicky. I see you out there. I know you faithful. So appreciate you making the time to come through, making the time to be able to be with us tonight and just to be able to hear this information or just to conversate with us tonight. So my name is Sala. If this is your first time here, my name is Sala. I am a licensed mental health therapist here in Washington. I do this amazing work alongside my colleague Scarlett. She's going to introduce herself later on and then share a little bit about the work that she's doing as well. But honestly, I can go on and introduce myself, but at this point, I just feel like we all know each other here. We're family. Just be ready, because tonight's community conversation is one of my favorite. Now, I know we say this a lot in all of our community conversations, but it truly is, okay? It truly is. I feel like all of these community conversations are our favorite because Scarlett and I, when we put this together, we did put our hearts into this. And so all of these different topics are what we are passionate about. So we really enjoy having these conversations. And even though that it could be the same material, but the conversation every single time is absolutely different because different people are tuning in every time. So they're sharing different feedbacks. We're getting feedbacks. We're learning from everyone as well. So without any further ado, again, my name is Sala. I'm a licensed mental health therapist. I do this work alongside my amazing colleague Scarlett, which I'm going to turn the floor over to. But our conversation tonight is on cultural fatigue. What is it, and do I have it? Let me tell you, when we first launched this conversation, it was a fire one. It was a very, very interesting conversation to have, because everyone was just kind of usually we hear compassion fatigue, right? But we never really hear of cultural fatigue. Well, cultural fatigue is a thing. And from what Scarlett and I have experienced together in working with our PI communities, this is a topic that we tend to, again, another one of the themes that pops up for us when we are working with our community people, right? So I'm really excited to be able to share this conversation tonight with everyone. The first half of this conversation, Scarlett's going to be facilitating, and then the second half, I'll be facilitating, and then Scarlett and I are both going to be sharing some quick tips at the end, practical tips like we usually do. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Scarlett to introduce herself and get us going. Here we go.
It's like the science hands. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's community conversation. Again, it's another fire conversation, and Sal and I absolutely enjoy these community conversations, because when we meet, afterwards, we talk about what we can add to it, what was people's feedback. And we want to thank all of those who have filled out the short survey that helps us to continue to make these class better for you all, because this is why we do it. We do it truly for our community. I'm excited to continue to be doing this work, and always an honor to do this work with Sala, and as well as the team that's behind us as well. So for those of you who are new here and the first time watching it, even if you're watching the replay, my name is Scarlett Ekiroma. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a boundaries coach. Been in this field for over a decade. I work through my private practice, Elevate Healing. And I absolutely truly enjoy what I do, especially passing on the knowledge to our communities for sure. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start my screen, and listen, be prepared to engage. Okay, because that's what we love with you all. And so again, if you never heard of cultural fatigue before, hopefully you walk away from this knowing a little bit more about it, and also really knowing a little bit more about yourself as well. So I'm going to start and share my screen.
Yep. And as Scarlett is
Oh.
pulling that up again, like throughout, the presentation, feel free to ask us questions. You can stop us at any point and ask your questions, share a comment, or even share a story that you feel like is relatable to what we are talking about. Again, like cultural fatigue, I feel like Scarlett and I kind of put a language into something that we were all experiencing collectively. So I feel like with this conversation, we just kind of like put words to it, like this is what it is, right? So excited for tonight. So Scarlett, all yours.
Thank you. And Sala, can you see my screen? We're good. Awesome. So again, one of the themes that Sala and I always talk about is, again, this topic literally comes up in the people that we see in our office. And one of our biggest things that Sal and I talked about, like we were really big on discussing publicly what is often discussed privately, because we see our people suffer. And so I because we did a short survey, because we actually presented it to other Pacific Islander clinicians, and they gave us some good talking points when we talked about the word cultural fatigue. And it was very interesting to see what happened, because I think one of the biggest things I remember them saying was literally managing the feelings of actually what respect and disrespect was. They were talking about imposter syndrome, and part of it was also, when it comes to culture, they always felt like they had to defend the culture, and who you were and who you are. And then what also was along with that came with pressure, just a lot of pressure, and feeling also that they had to be better or one up somebody, or just to show out. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about, like, also some of the symptoms that we have seen that people have experienced in our offices, and it was an impact of cultural fatigue. So, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions or comments, please keep it relevant to our topic tonight. So we will be monitoring all chats in the Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube as well. So again, if you have questions and you would like to share, again, it's a community conversation. Please don't hesitate to share, because that's what we are here for. So this is our agenda for tonight. So we're going to be introducing again and defining what cultural fatigue is. Then we're going to talk about the cycle. Sal and I created a cycle of regards of how it looks when it represents us. Then we're going to break down each stage of the cycle. And again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And then we're going to talk always about self-care tips of how you can reduce cultural fatigue, find the balance in it, and again, truly take care of yourself. All right. So of course, this is our introduction to cultural fatigue. One of the things we always want to talk about, of course, is the importance of culture. And, part of the importance of culture is keeping Native customs alive and relevant due to acculturation. For those who don't know what the definition of acculturation is, either it's adapting and assimilating to a different cultural norms, typically the dominant one, other than your native culture. So this acculturation typically happens when you live out of your native homeland. Of course, it helps contribute to our self-identity, and it impacts how an individual or group behaves. For example, how we express ourselves in language and our body, and how also we problem solve. And those are just some examples. So before we get into the definition, first engagement question for tonight is, what ideas or thoughts do you have when you hear the phrase cultural fatigue? Don't worry, I'm patient. And there is no wrong answer. And then Celia, let us know if anything is in the chat as well, please, in the Facebook chat.
I want to share a response from one of the attendees last time we did this conversation, when I think this individual of Asian descent was saying, like, cultural fatigue is getting tired of your own, or of identifying with your own culture, to the point where, I think he said, getting tired of identifying with your own culture to the point where you don't want to have anything to do with your culture of origin. So that always kind of stuck with me, because I think when you and I were kind of, researching like how we could define cultural fatigue for this conversation, that was nowhere near what we were, kind of thinking, right? But it was so interesting, like you said, like it was so interesting to hear other people's how they define cultural fatigue, which I mean, I feel like that just adds to what it is. Like I said, like I think you and I like really put a name to something that collectively we were experiencing, right? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that we're limited to like this definition, just that for the purposes of this conversation, this is what we would define it as. But then to hear other people's like ideas of how they perceive cultural fatigue was also very interesting. Like that individual where he's like, cultural fatigue to him was just being tired of identifying with your own culture to the point where you don't want to have anything to do with that, with your culture of origin. So just wanted to share that. Food for thought.
No, I love that. Yeah, I've heard that's a good reminder of that, because and it's a good reminder, like, even though Sala and I will be help defining what it is, it does not mean that you can't add to the definition of it. And so, and you always have to make it what it is for you. So, I think when Sal and I first talked about cultural fatigue, when we first talked about it, I'm just like, one of the things that I remember feeling when we came up with this phrase, Sala, was how heavy it felt. How heavy, and it was just like tiresome is what I remember feeling when we talked about that. So does anybody want to add anything before we press forward? And Sal,
I feel like that was I feel like that was also like just it was indicative of how the clients that we were seeing, where that gave us the idea of like, or the theme of cultural fatigue, is that is what they were experiencing. It was a lot of heaviness from, their cultural experiences. So I think like what you described there is absolutely valid, in the sense that the people that we were seeing and we're continuing to seeing in our own practices, people of our community, and these are not like any other, these are Pacific Islander people, and what they were experiencing was that heaviness, and they weren't able to call it something, but I think for us, like, we were able to say, you can call it this, right? Because like I said, most of these things with like mental health, like, we don't even have words for it. And I think when you and I were like, well, we see this phenomena across the board, with our community, and they're experiencing this. And we're like, is it compassion? Is it compassion fatigue? We're like, well, it's more like cultural fatigue, because that's what it is. Like, that's literally what we were experiencing. I mean, we have our own stories too of how we experienced it. But we just didn't know what to call it. But we were feeling it, like, just a sense of heaviness, but we know what it is now. We can call it this.
For sure. Go ahead, Celie.
Yeah, I would say it's just like wanting to take a break, from being whatever it is you identify with, right? Take a break being Samoan, take a break being whatever your culture is.
That's good. No, I love that. That's really
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
that's a good point too, Silly, because then like going away from like thinking that like as we continue on tonight's conversation, that culture is not just Pacific Islander and our Samoan individual cultures. It
Hmm.
could be a church culture,
Yep.
right? It could be, your family culture. So it could be the
Hmm.
cultural fatigue within a context of your family, or cultural
Hmm.
fatigue in the context of your church family,
Hmm.
or, your work even is a
Yep.
culture in and of itself. So it could be that. So keep all of those different things, because sometimes we could be like, well, is it ethnicity? Because a lot of time when we
Hmm.
think culture, we think ethnicity, but it's like it doesn't have to be ethnicity. It can be like your family. It can be in the context of work. So
Hmm.
just keep all those things in mind. So that was a good thing to point out.
Yeah, love that. So then my next question is, do you think you have cultural fatigue or have experienced it or know someone who does or has? And so that's something to also sit with, as we continue to go through this definition. So, the definition that Sal and I had came up with in regards to cultural fatigue is extreme psychological, physical, emotional tiredness resulting from mental, physical exertion relating to the ideas, customs, and social behaviors of society or ethnic culture. Um, so the key word I would say in this is extreme, because in regards to all the areas of culture that Sala was talking about, there is sometimes where we overexert ourselves. And so we have this again, and it can be, we can add spiritual tiredness in there as well if we would like. And so a lot of times what happens is in cultural fatigue, we're always, from what I've seen and observed, and Sala as well, it's always giving at the cost of your overall health and well-being. And a lot of times we operate, when we do whatever thing for whatever culture however this plays out for you, and sometimes we operate from a place of guilt. That's why we continue to do those things for the culture, and that's why, whether it's guilt, our own guilt given to us, and such forth. And so the unfortunate things, like some of the things that our clients have experienced, is there financial stress. They could have like physical ailments. So psychosomatic symptoms is what we call them in the therapy world. So there can be nausea, headaches, sickness, whatever physically ill, and high blood pressure. There can be short temper, anxiety, depression, little to no sleep. And a lot of times how we cope with those, and when we come to cultural fatigue, is like we excessively drink, excessively smoke, sometimes excessively eat, or eat very little, suffer in silence, or we don't, or we like have very to little to no sleep. So those are, again, that is some of the symptoms that people have experienced or can experience, and it's an exhaustive list. It's not like you have to have these things in order to say you have cultural fatigue. No, those are just some of the symptoms that we have seen that have come across in some of the coping strategies. So again, the key word I would say is the extreme and everybody's extreme is different. But for you, it's like I said, these are all self definitions for you. It's the extreme psychological, physical, and emotional tiredness is what I would say. Anybody want to add anything? And Sal, if you want to add anything before I go forward, let me know.
I think Sylvia had a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Scarlett and Sarah. Um, I think that this
Or
topic
Sala.
here it just completely applied to me. Like on the past weekend, I have
Mm,
two things like that. Just like Saturday, it was a big community health fair, and Sunday that we gathered, all our churches and our Tongan community to come together like we do, like interfaith, Christmas
mhm.
carol. So I think what I'm trying to say, what what is the difference, between a vulnerable, you feel vulnerable, you think like, maybe, like something that not going well or whatever, and then, like you feel like that people are blaming you or whatever, or the cultural fatigue. Is that the same thing as vulnerable, or that's totally different, because sometimes I could be very weak on that,
Mhm.
both events, went really well, but
Mhm.
sometimes, I don't always have a room, to put up with that,
Mhm.
especially with culture. because
I think,
everybody knows each other.
yeah, I think, and solid chime in as well as I go give an answer. Part of what I hear, Auntie Sylvia, is that what plays a role in this, honestly, a lot of times in cultural fatigue is when you don't have healthy boundaries for yourself. And so
Right.
if you're having someone who's saying whatever the negative things that they're saying to you, you
Exactly.
have to, part of the thing that I always recommend to clients is like, is it whatever they're saying, does that actually fit you? And if you truly decide to do that or continue forward, does that take away, or not to continue forward, does that take away from who you are? Because if they're always used to you doing something and not actually giving you space or room to make a decision not to do it, then you have to really think about it. It's just like, how do they actually view me? Can they not, are they, what's the reason they feel like I always have to do it? What's the reason that they can't step up in that space if you need it? Because depending on somebody to just solely do everything, that's a lot of pressure. That's truly, truly a lot of pressure.
Right.
So does that help, Auntie Sylvia,
Yeah, it's
at
very
all?
helpful. So, please, if you could just repeat that one more time, it's like somebody is like that, maybe that just a habit of that person, only bring up the negative part, Do you have to
Yeah.
kind of fight back or you just kind of understand that's how that level of that person, always
Well,
find
so that's
something
the
to
thing. So you have
blame,
to
to
sit
complain
with,
about?
like, you have to ask yourself, okay, if this person is always saying something negative about me or something that's going on, that says more about what's going on in that person's life. And it's just like, because what it comes across as is, if I don't um do as you want, then how do you actually view me as a person? Are you just using me in the space for you? And it's because it's like a lot of what I teach my clients is not how to take on someone else's stuff. And so what part of what we always do is like, what's the question I need to ask myself? Okay, are they mad at me truly because I'm tired? And it's like, if they're mad
Yes.
at me because I'm tired, I can't do it. Again, that says more about the individual wanting, and a lot of times, like, people just want to use you for whatever it is. And it can be what an array of things. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes some people don't know that they're using people unless somebody points it out to them.
Right, exactly. But sometimes, like I feel that, like instead of, like the other person, like, is there another better way, to approach them, like at the end of the thing, like you try to teach everyone, say what went well and what need to be improved, instead of just
Mhm.
finding like ways of their expectation, and blame it on you, like if you're a leader or something,
Yeah.
or in charge of something, like, and then it makes you feel like stressed out or
Hmm.
being angry. But
Hmm.
like what it will be like a healthy boundaries, to deal with that. You ignore it, or it's something, that you have to let the other person know, because it would becoming a habit for that person, and you feel like there's damaging, like, you know,
Well, are you okay with having them plan the next thing if they feel like they could do it differently and do it better?
yeah, that would be fine also. But if you're like,
Hmm.
maybe if you're in charge, or being like a coordinator, a leader of
Hmm.
something, and you do your part, and those
Hmm.
people are just quiet. But when it's coming, after the event, it didn't meet the expectation, and they have, and then, like they becoming to say this and that, that's what is a healthy way
Yeah.
to kind of deal with those kind of behavior.
I think one of the questions I would always ask is this actually a realistic expectation or unrealistic?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Unrealistic.
So,
Yeah.
and if you're saying that it should have been done this way, but and it's just one person who is saying that, then that
All the
one
time.
person's opinion can't dominate the overall success of whatever's happening.
Right, right. Do you have to
Yeah.
ignore it, or you just have to stop it?
Well, I think one of the things you have to think about is like, what is actually best for
Professional
you?
way.
Yeah, what is actually best for you? Some battles, like, some people just like to be in that. So
Right.
that's what I would say to that.
Thank you so much for both of you. Yeah,
You're welcome.
now you're enlightening me to to get some thoughts.
For sure, for
Don't
sure.
deal with the
Um,
fire.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Sala, Celia, are we good in the chats? Good?
Yep, we are
Yep.
good to go.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about these stages. Let's talk about the cycle of cultural fatigue. And here's the thing. Though we have this cycle, it doesn't mean it goes in order all the time. It just everybody experiences these stages at different points in their life, and it does not have to definitely go in order. So we identified these phases because these in this order, because this was the most common that we had seen our clients experience. And again, you may start at a different stage. You may experience the stages in any other order, or you may not experience the stage at all. So with stage one, we got motivation and attraction, then ambivalence, strong sense of duty and obligation, delusion and apathy, and burnout. So any questions? If you have any questions, don't go ahead and put it in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and start breaking these stages down. So stage one, motivation and attraction, is high energy level and excited to be a part of the cultural event. This phase, what I always say, this stage is like it's exciting, because this is like the bonding, this is belonging to, you feel like you belong to the community. And I know for me, when I'm in this stage, I was just like, a lot of times when I'm in the planning phase of it, I don't get to see a lot of the people who I see, and I get so excited to see them. And and we just do this just like massive catch up. How have you been, and such forth and such forth. Then we have, ready, available, and willing to go the extra mile to help with the cultural success quickly, and sometimes overly commit, and then ready to make a difference. In this phase, we often don't really think about what is being asked of us. And we, like I said, we are either excited or feel dutiful at this stage. And oftentimes we only think about like the end result and the beauty of the event. And sometimes we kind of miss all the planning and stuff that kind of goes in between all that. So again, this is stage one, motivation and attraction. Sala, is there anything you want to add? And then if anybody wants to have a question or add anything, please do so.
I want to use the example of like this stage as far as like and let's say for example in the context of an office setting, right?
Mhm.
So when let's say whenever you have like a new job and you go to maybe it's your first day, first couple months or whatnot, that office, wherever that workplace is, already has some kind of culture already. They have a flow of things. They have a certain kind of dynamic of how things flow in that office, right? So we can say that that office space has like, they have their own culture, their own way of doing things. So I would like an example for the stage would be like, kind of like that first day where you're excited to learn, where you are looking forward to, seeing how you can contribute and be part of the team. You're excited to see how you can help, right? And maybe this is something that ties into something that you're passionate about, right? So I think about like, for example, I want to pull in Auntie Sylvia's, example, right? So maybe there's like an organization. So this would be like when you first maybe set up this event, you're excited. I'm looking forward to planning because I know that this is going to bring our community together. The excitement is there. The motivation is there. The attraction is there. You feel like, by doing this event or by contributing, being part of the team in this office space, you can make a difference, right? Everything that Scarlett's talking about. So this is just kind of like, the first part of it, right? Like I'm motivated, I'm attracted. So I think of it that way. I'm going to try and pull that same example into all the different stages. Okay. But just think of it as in a context of like an office space. You're going into work. They already have some kind of culture dynamic. And this is how you are feeling when you are, initially starting work there.
Love that. Yeah, because I mean, as you were saying that, this is kind of like almost like when I used to get excited about going to school the first day. It's like you get your outfit, you get your school supplies. I love school shopping. So I definitely love the example that you gave for sure. Does anybody have any questions or want to add anything before we
Yes, I
press
have one
forward?
from Sina Aloitafuna Peckers is the one that working with this co-host, but also that
Mm-hmm.
she's the one that running the senior program
Awesome.
for the Tongan community. Okay, Sina. Oh, if the line is cut off. Well, she mentioned, cultural fatigue fall to a lot of islanders that are born in another country and trying to
Mm-hmm.
fit into the culture. We see a lot of this behavior and culture fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, her line was cut off.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, no,
think
Yeah,
it was
I
just like
can
a
totally see
comment.
that.
mm-hmm. Go ahead, Sal.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, in a cultural setting or cultural example, I can totally see
Oh,
that, right?
so sorry, she's
I
on right
think
now.
about like kids that are, wanting to get in touch with their Samoan culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they were raised in the US and grew up in the US, but they are Samoans and they're like they've never been to Samoa, or their parents are Samoan and they want to learn the language. They want to learn all of the traditions and what it means to kaida sua, what it means to, so I would definitely, say that that's what this is that initial, like, I'm motivated, I'm attracted to my culture, I'm looking forward to kind of learning something about my culture. So in that context, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yeah.
Did you want to say anything else, Auntie Sylvia?
Oh, yeah. It was just Sina that was coming on, but she kept cutting off,
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but I think, like the motivation and attraction, is like very important too. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at this topic here, I really think, almost like 100%, like this is something that very, very true, like as far as, dealing with cultural fatigue sometimes, some people dealing with it and they maybe don't have a good experience or whatever, and they wanted to isolate themselves, from our culture,
Mm-hmm.
or they get
Mm-hmm.
angry, and they said, oh, I don't want to be participate, like in that.
Mm-hmm.
Or what is maybe something that, based on the study and the research, about this topic here, do you think that how can you try to keep everyone to be just feel like it's like a healthy cultural. Oh, I think that's is on right now. Okay, Sina, you can go ahead and talk. We're listening. Hello, Sina, go ahead. Sina.
Hey, Tima, it's echoing. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
You're on.
Okay, I have a quick question. A lot of these stage motivation and attraction fall into
It broke up.
Sina.
our youth and in the community, specifically Pacific Islanders.
Can you repeat the question one more time? Sina, if you could repeat your question one more time, please.
Okay, thank you, Tima. Okay, please share how the stage motivation and attraction fit into our youth that were born here in America.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, did you get that?
So I'm trying to understand what the question is. And so is the question asking, how do we get the youth motivated and attracted to?
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Okay. So I think I'll say this from the youth I have worked with. It depends on how it's introduced to them. And so if there's not a clear explanation of the reasons we do whatever we do for our culture, it doesn't keep them attracted to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hopefully that answers Sina's question. If she has another question, just please let us know. So, um, okay. We're good?
Yes.
Let's go.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So
Yes.
stage 2 is where we talk about ambivalence. For those of you who don't know the definition of ambivalence, ambivalence is defined as having mixed feelings or ideas about something or someone. And so in this stage, typically I have seen where there can be like the traditionalists versus the modernists. So for example, so to continue to explain this phase, so again, you begin to have mixed feelings and or thoughts after realizing the commitment required or needed. And then you question if you want to participate. You possibly begin doubting if you want to continue forward. And then you may disagree with individuals a part of the cultural event. In this phase, I have observed and experienced an individual or the group. A lot of times during this phase, either complain, will complain during this phase, and they don't enjoy it because they can feel exhausted or fatigued and or stressed. And in this stage of what I've seen also is that this is sometimes where arguments occur, and at times resentment can occur in this stage as well. Sally, anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope.
Any questions from anybody about this phase, this stage?
And also remember, we do label them as stages, right?
Mhm.
But like Scarlett said earlier, it doesn't mean you have to experience stage 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It really is, these are just ways that we have compiled the information that we have in being able to manage, to present it in a way that comes out as like, okay, that makes sense, right? It helps it to organize how we think about things.
Absolutely. Any questions, any comments? Celia, I see you're unmuted.
What
No,
about
we're
like
good.
if someone
Okay.
it's always think like the culture differences play role in ambivalence.
Say more.
Do you think culture differences play role in ambivalence?
Are you talking about in regards to age, like
Yes.
youth versus? Oh, I think it always, like I said, I'll say out of my opinion, I think if for especially for the youth, bringing them along, it depends on how it's introduced to them. And so ambivalence, I think ambivalence can happen like throughout all of what happens in cultural fatigue, because and that's the thing, you can experience more than one stage at one time. You can go teeter back and forth, and like I said earlier, you can maybe not experience any of this feature. Somebody may just skip ambivalence and be like, oh no, I actually enjoy what I'm doing and this is what I want to do, and you just may not experience it at all. But I think if we're talking about cultural differences, when we're talking about youth versus the older generation, it can play a role in how somebody feels or or feels or thinks about whatever the cultural aspect and cultural event is.
Thank you.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
Very helpful.
To add on to that too, like cultural differences and it comes to ambivalence, I think like it just depend on the context, right? Because there's the cultural context of ambivalence, and then remember, like when I said earlier, there's a context of culture in workplace, there's context of culture in your home, in your church group, right? So it can be that culture can be experienced differently depending on the setting, depending on the community, right?
Yep.
So then if you're asking if like cultural difference like have something to do with the ambivalence, it's like I think depending on how people are experiencing culture, I think it makes sense, like whatever their level of ambivalence is, because ambivalence, all it is like they're not sure, right? They're not sure about something. That's what ambivalence is. So if I'm going into like, say, that office example that I was using earlier, And I'm excited. I just got this new job. I'm excited to learn the culture of my workplace. I'm excited to see how I can be part of the team, to contribute. I'm looking forward to, making memories, all of that stuff. But then that maybe that stage of excitement, maybe for some people, it can last for however many years. For some people, it could last months, right? Before they get to experience, I'm not too sure about this job now. I've been doing it for a couple months now, and I don't know. I'm not really liking the hours, and for how much work I'm doing, I'm not too sure about the pay that I'm getting too. That's ambivalence, right? So, like I said, but that's at the context of at work, in a work environment. You can look at ambivalence too when in relation to culture, right? So like in the first stage of excitement, like I can think of my kids and how they are excited to learn my Samoan language. They're excited to learn how to do all the Samoan traditions and things like that. They're excited. But maybe after a couple of months of me trying to teach them Samoan language and culture and all that stuff, now they're like, oh my gosh, mom, this is too hard. Now they're like not too sure. That could be ambivalence. But you see, all of these different experiences or stages, it can last like months, years even, just depending on the person, on the individual, and how their experience is. Right. So keep those things in mind as we continue to go through the different stages. So when you were asking about cultural difference and if that has, anything to do with like ambivalence, like one, I think it depends on the context. And then depending on how the person is experiencing culture in that context, what kind of determine maybe the degree or the extent of their ambivalence.
Because I think the other part of this also, Sal, as you were saying, is that people define young and old and individually define culture very different. And so it's and sometimes people have to reconciliate with culture, especially if we're talking about ethnicity in regards to culture. And so, and the reason why I say that is because I have helped some of the youth reconciliate. Me myself, I had to reconciliate with just my Samoan culture just in general, because though I was born in Samoa, I was raised here in the States. So it's just like learning about how to, invite culture and invite, because I was in ambivalence probably for years, because I just had a lot of mixed ideas because, of course, I was used to the culture in the United States, especially growing up in the South, versus versus what actually is taught when living in Samoa. So it was like just going, like trying to figure out both of those worlds. Yeah. So
Yeah,
again,
for
ambivalence
sure.
can last for a hot minute, is what I would say. So
Yeah.
I saw somebody, Lupe, had the question was, will that because of the language interpretation throughout from parents and the mixture of the parties that are involved in the surrounding of an individual knowing about culture? So Lupe, is your question asking about, does language play a part in knowing about culture? Or I'm assuming you're talking about cultural fatigue. Is that what you're referring to? Like the language interpretation?
Thank you, Scarlett. I
You're
was just
welcome.
referring the question from these guys here, but
Okay.
when you guys when you guys were mentioning it, it all tied in when they were tried to answer it, because it is they tried to echo it is how the leaders that really extend their experience of things. What you and Miss Sarah already packed it up from what part of the question, because of how leaders interpret the way they make. They want to make it better in their way, or to leeway from out from what it was norm, or all of the above as you mentioned. And so I was telling them to listen until you guys finish discussing. So they were answered.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
I'm glad it was answered. So um appreciate that. And just so everyone knows, it's Sala, not Sarah, please. So I just want to put that out there.
Although
So
I've always wanted a English name, Sarah.
well, we can
Stay
fantasize
with
later.
stay with Miss Sala. It's good.
I was just saying, I've always wanted. It's like I always tell my mom, like, "Man, mom, why you gotta leave me with a super long name and middle name and last name?" But so I always joke around and be like, "Y'all, call me Sarah.
But yeah, definitely great questions, great conversation. And again, as we go through this again, because like I said, this is a whole new concept that we are introducing. And so again, if even after this, if you have questions or just please send it to us, because again, we'll answer them because we understand this is something that's not really heard within our BIPOC community, especially with our Pacific Island community as well. So Sala will be continuing forward with the rest of our stages.
All right. So with this ambivalence that we were talking about just now, this ambivalence, remember, this is when you're just like, oh, you experienced something you were excited about and you were looking forward to it. And then maybe a couple of years later, you were like, oh, I'm not too sure about this. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. So with ambivalence, it really kind of ushers us into doing something out of pure obligation and duty. Hence this third stage of strong sense of duty and obligation, right? So maybe it's something that started off with, passionate intentions, right? Remember that stage one where, we're so excited, there's commitment there, it started off with passionate intentions. You were passionate about this, to learn about something, to be part of the office group, to be part of the culture. Right. So what started off as, passionate intentions is now turning into like something that's more of like, now I'm just going through the motion. It's turning into an experience where I'm just going through the motion. I'm just doing it because, I'm used to doing it and I've been doing it for X amount of years. So I'm just going to keep doing it, even though that passion maybe is not there. And sometimes this is fueled by that fear of, maybe fear of disappointing people, or maybe even fear of like what people are going to think about me, what people are going to perceive about me. This is what fuels that, just keep going. I'm just going to keep, I've been working here for X amount of years. And you're not as excited as you were before when you first applied for that job, right? Remember I said I'm going to be using the same example. So maybe before you're not excited about working that same job anymore, and that's being in that same office culture. But maybe X amount of years later, you find yourself like, I'm just going through the motion. I'm just here collecting my paycheck, right? And like I said, a lot of it, when you get to that point, it's almost like you're just doing it just because it's gotten to the point where you've been doing it because it's what you've always done. And it can be fueled also by what Scarlett mentioned earlier, that guilt or shame, right? So this sense of duty and obligation, right? This is where a lot of us have too, where it's like, where we continue to serve or we continue to sacrifice our time or our money or our energy. We have this sense of duty or obligation. Now let me say this, right? Having a sense of duty and obligation is not a bad thing, right? I think about being in the military. In the military, and I used to serve in the military, being in the military, there's a lot of duty. There's a lot of sense of pride. There's a lot of sense of obligation. A lot of the military people as well, their jobs are also seen or perceived by society as honorable. It's an honorable thing, right? To have a sense of duty, to have that sense of obligation. So a sense of duty and obligation can be a good thing. But here's where I want you to really tune in, right? Because a strong sense of duty and obligation can get to the point where you have to consider what that sense of duty and obligation is costing you, right? So if the cost of this duty and obligation that you have is affecting you in a negative way, then, or like, for example, like, is it affecting you in your relationship, this strong sense of duty and obligation? Is it affecting you in your finances, this strong sense of duty and obligation? Is it affecting you in your mental health? Is it affecting you in your interpersonal relationships? That means how you communicate and how you relate to other people, right? Because a lot of the times, like I said, having a strong sense of duty and obligation can be a good thing. It can be a good thing, but it does get to the point where you continuing on to have this strong sense of duty and obligation. And I think that's the part where we want you to be aware of, is we want you to be aware of the part or the point in your life where the sense of duty and obligation to do something is coming to you at the cost of something else in your life. Because that's where we see a lot of our community people come in, right? And they're experiencing a whole bunch of things, a lot of mental health concerns. Why? Because they're continuing to give in to the culture of, the church, the culture of the home, the culture of the office, all the while it's costing them their mental health. It's costing them, they're not happy. They are miserable. They're feeling miserable. They are at the point where, like I said earlier, that passion is gone, right? That sense of passion and excitement, it's gone. They're just kind of going through the motion right now. It's just a check the box for me. I'm just here to collect my paycheck now. I'm maybe this job that I used to really enjoy before, like now it's more of like, I'm just here to, get paid, right? That passion is not there anymore. But I just have a strong sense of duty and obligation to still do this. So we're not saying take away your sense of duty and obligation. What we are saying is just be aware that your sense of duty and obligation can cost you, and be aware of what it is costing you in your life. Okay. I know that was a lot, so I'm going to pause here for comments and questions. Or Scarlett, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, just in addition, again, remember the definition of culture fatigue, just a short definition, is extreme tiredness from mental or physical exertion. So that's based on all of these stages. When it gets to, that's why I said the key word in that definition was extreme. And like I said, everybody's definition of extreme and capacity of whatever it is different. So you have to go based on you, not based on someone else.
Mm-hmm. And this is sort of what's listed on the slide are some of what that can look like, of what that strong sense of duty and obligation can look like. So you could be, extremely exhausted because you continue to put yourself in situations that are stressful, right? So an example I put was being able to contribute financially to multiple family falaves or events, maybe in 1 month, and you're tired, you're miserable, you're not happy, you're stressed out all of the time. But guess what? You're gonna give. When they ask again, you're gonna give. Out of what? Out of sense of duty and obligation, right? So that's an example. Other needs or other people's needs become priority over your own individual needs. So that means giving of your time and your money, even though you are struggling financially, or you need rest because you work maybe a double shift, but you continue to give, you continue to do it because you have a strong sense of duty and obligation. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the time, what is fueling that is guilt and shame. It could be guilt, shame, and I don't want to be perceived as so and so and so and so. I don't know what people are going to say about me or think about me if I don't do it. Ignoring your own personal values and your own personal worth and things that are important to you. Why? Because you still have a strong sense of duty and obligation to this. So again, we're bringing this to you so that you can be aware of having a strong sense of duty and obligation is absolutely okay. I think there's a lot of honor in that. And our culture being collectivistic in nature, we are also an honor culture. A lot of the things that we do in sense of honor. So it's good to have a sense of duty and obligation, but be aware of when that sense of duty and obligation starts costing you, because that's when it becomes sort of a maladaptive thing for you to have. Okay. Questions, comments?
I would say, like, as you were talking, we're talking about putting other people's needs before you. I have literally seen my people go to like more than one event per day because of strong sense of duty and obligation, but literally will be highly, extremely exhausted. Just not, like I said, exhausted mentally and physically and financially. So that's because of the strong sense of duty and obligation.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because then, like, we tend to have a lot of events in our culture, right? We tend to have a lot of events, whether it is, celebratory events, or it could be events on funerals or weddings or whatever family obligations that we do have. And so sometimes I often wonder how much we do give, to where it's like out of our sense of duty and obligation to our culture, to our community, at the cost of our own well-being. Whether that is, like, we continue to give out of a strong duty and obligation to the community as a whole, but then individually I could be suffering, or individually in like my own little immediate family, we are suffering in the sense that we're going to be eating noodles the entire week because mama
Bread and
just
butter.
had to give to the funeral. Right? Because I had to give to the funeral because, I don't want to be perceived as like not helping the family out. Right? So at what cost is it to you, out of that sense of duty and obligation? And that's
sure.
just something we want to bring to the awareness of our community.
For sure. No, that's good. So, in the Facebook chat, it says, let's say you are someone who solely wants to break away from certain familial and cultural obligations. How would you best inform others without feeling you're letting everyone down? Also, what if there's no one else to pick up that responsibility? So that is the question from Dr. Tui. Hi, Dr. Tui.
Hi. So good. Oh,
Good question.
say that question again. Yes, say that question again.
Yes. So let's say you're someone who slowly wants to break away from certain familiar and cultural obligations. How would you best inform others without feeling like you're letting everyone down? Also, what if there's no one else to pick up that responsibility? Asking for a friend.
Yes. yes. I love that question, because then, I think like one thing I would say to that is, before you even consider how others are going to think or feel about your decision, you have to be okay, right? You have to be okay with what you are about to do, right? So you have to, I think that's a good place to start, right? Is being okay with, like, you know what? This is something that I have decided to do. And Scarlett and I, like, we've talked about this so much, as far as that's pretty much boundaries. That's what boundary is. And boundary is being able to, like, know that it's like, okay, you know what? This is what I'm okay with. This is what I'm not okay with. And then understanding that with boundaries, you know what's within your control. And here's what's so trippy and what's so difficult about boundaries. Knowing what's within your control, and then being okay that whatever's not within your control, you just have to be okay with that. Because there's no way that you can control how other people are going to think about your decision, how other people are going to feel about your decision, or whether or not they're going to respond in whatever way you're expecting them to respond to your decision. So that is boundary. That's a lot of boundary work. But I think, like, before even going, further into, what am I going to do now if there's no one to carry that on? Or a place to start, I would think, is being able to start with yourself, being able to be okay with whatever it is that you've decided to do. And you have to reconcile with this fact that no matter what you decide to do, you can decide to, like, just continue on doing what you're doing. But then it may or may not change, how other people are going to respond to that. So that would mean that, like, whether or not you decide to, put down your boundary or not, people are going to respond however they're going to want to respond. So I would say, just a place to start is being able to just clearly identify and being confident in whatever boundary that you're deciding to implement, before even thinking about or considering how other people are going to respond to it. And then join our boundaries conversation, because that's when we really delve into, like the nitty gritty of, like, boundary, which is, like, amazing.
For sure. And the only thing I would add to Sala, so this is actually a conversation I had with a client today, and we talked about that because they didn't feel like someone would pick up the responsibility. So I asked them, I said, If you were in another country that had no cell service and this event was going on while you were there, do you think they would figure it out? And she was like, well, yeah. I said, so that's what you know. They will always, the one thing I know about our people, just BIPOC people in general, we are highly resourceful. And so a lot of what I talk with my clients about is not trying to rescue everything, not trying to fix it and feel like you're the only one who can do it. And that's not true, because somebody's watching, somebody knows how to pick it up. The thing you have to let go of is the control of how you want it to be, because the thing of, and like Sala was saying, you have to be okay with the decision you make, regardless of what someone else thinks about you. Because listen, everybody here in this chat has survived somebody talking bad about them. They have. Hey, we have all survived hard days. We are all literally walking miracles. And so we have to take out this that it can't happen, or I can't, or it can't, or somebody can't do it because I'm not doing it. So again, it's that whole, what Sala was saying earlier, are we actually doing this because we love it, we enjoy it, or are we actually doing it because of guilt and shame?
Yeah,
So
and it's hard, like trying to, put down boundaries and especially as, in our community, in our collectivistic communities. Well, that's why we have the boundary conversation, is because we do realize that it is across the board. Like, it's really difficult for us, because that's our nature as collectivistic people. That is our nature. So it's always difficult, but it's possible.
It is possible because we do it. So Dr. Tui said, hi, love this dialogue. Thanks, Dr. Tui. Sina from Facebook had said, her question is, when is the right time? When is the right time that we teach ourselves to limit this strong sense of duty and obligation?
I would say that would be, just depends on you. I can't speak to that for you. But I think like maybe something that you can look to is, if and when these things, right, that I mentioned earlier, if and when your strong sense of duty and obligation starts to cause you significant distress. Scarlett mentioned earlier, the key point is extreme, right? So we all have a strong sense of duty and obligation. And like I mentioned, having a strong sense of duty and obligation, like it's a good thing. But I think one way you can differentiate that is being able to know when your strong sense of duty and obligation is starting to cause you significant distress, right? So that means what that can look like is, maybe I don't have enough, in my budget. Like, I set up a budget for this month. And so maybe I don't have enough in my budget for just anything else, because I've got, money come in and it's got somewhere to go. So, I have it all budgeted out. But let's say, for example, my family from Samoa calls me and says, daughter, please, so-and-so just passed away, and, this is your cousin and so-and-so. And, they're going to say that we're related. You need to send some money. That strong sense of duty and obligation, for me, what that can look like is, despite knowing that I don't have enough to give, right, to give extra money away, I'm still going to do it, right? So let's just say, you know what, even though I know in my budget I don't have enough, I'm still going to give it, because I don't want, I'm going to feel guilty. I'm going to feel like I'm not contributing to the family. So I'm going to send the money to Samoa. So now that after I send the money, guess what? Now I'm in an argument with my spouse, because he's like, well, where did the rent go? Now I'm stressed out because like some bill is not getting paid because of that, right? So now all of these things are like, are stressing me out. All these things that I'm experiencing is giving me anxiety. And so that's the point, right? So that's where that's where we're saying, I think intervention is needed, because if this is what you're usually doing, you're not putting yourself in a good place. And this is where we see a lot of our community members. We see a lot of our community members sitting across from us. They are stressed out to the point of exhaustion because of a strong sense of duty and obligation, right? So we teach them, ways to be able to be like, okay, you can still honor your sense of duty and obligation. And at the same time, you can still honor it to the point where you're not sacrificing, or it's not costing you like your entire, month's bill or something, right? So you can, and that's where the boundaries come in, and why we also stress and teach boundaries as well. So hopefully that that helps address it. But I think, like, just to pretty much sum up what you were asking, a way that you can distinguish between, when to, step away from that sense of duty and obligation, if it's causing you significant distress, I would then be able to like take a step back and reassess and be like, okay, all right, this is not working right now. And then how can I implement my boundaries?
For sure. That's good. Question from Lupe is, so it's a pretty lengthy one. But if you're the only sort of a chosen individual that can only help to serve the duties and obligations naturally because it was chosen spirit-led of what the elders believed, where's the respect and obedience will be in that relationship? Also, if you believe that they are your main resources that strategize your walk and your work of serving, that really erase the vulnerable and exhaustion, or maybe the cultural fatigue, and they believe that is love is the body of works of action. So I would hit, I think it's just like really what Saul said, because remember, this is based on extreme tiredness, and so one of the things I always would love Saul is, if you feel like that's what you want to do and it's not going to cost you anything, then do it.
Go for it.
Go for it. If you feel that that's what you need to do, the only reason why we continue to have this conversation is because this is what we consistently see in our people that come to our office. And so if that's what you feel that you need to do, by all means, and it doesn't take away from you, then please do it. And one of the things, like, we met with some spiritual leaders, our Samoan spiritual leaders, this past year twice. And one of the things we talked about with them is, so that they don't feel they have to carry everything, we talked about, hey, let's delegate. And it was like a sigh of relief. They were like, oh, I don't have to do it all. So I think that's one of the things when we feel like we're assigned to do like whatever we're called to do. It's like we have to do it alone, and you don't. You can actually build a team and actually help delegate some of the duties you feel that you can pass on to someone else. So that's how I would answer that. Hopefully does that help?
No, that was good.
Yeah,
that's good. I would have responded the same way as well. That was good. And then like Scarlett mentioned, that's what we share. We're not trying to take away from anything. Like, if you feel like this is your, God-given calling, right, bestowed upon you to do this, whatever that duty and that, obligation is, do it. Because if it's not causing you any, any sleepless night, then that means you're okay. That means you're okay. If you're not, stressing out to pay your bills, because you're having to give, that means you are absolutely okay. That means you are financially able to do so, right? That's fine. But we are speaking into a lot of what we do see, a lot of what our community people are experiencing, where they will give until there is nothing to give, and they will give and sacrificing like their rent, their, even like, buying their own food, things like that. And that's where, because then if that happens, guess what? It just brings them into a lot more issues that they're having to work through.
For sure.
Great conversation. All right, moving on. So stage 4, disillusioned and apathy. So apathy is lack of interest, right? That means you're at the point where I'm not even like, motivation is out the door, excitement is out the door. Not even enthusiastic about, doing what I'm doing. I'm not even concerned. It's almost like I don't even care. That's kind of the attitude of apathy, right? Your lack of interest. Disillusioned is when you're, I want to say it's when you're like disappointed, right? You're kind of disappointed in something that you're like, man, I thought this job was going to be it. I thought I was going to be like, I was so excited about it. Remember that first stage? I was excited about it. And then, maybe a couple of years later, I'm like, I'm not too sure about this job anymore, right? And then you're at the point where like, well, I'm just going to keep going and clock in because, this is what I've always been doing for years. But now you're at the point where you're just like, I don't even care anymore. Like, it's just like, I thought this was what it was, and I'm kind of disappointed it's not what I thought it was going to be. But this is where resentment creeps in. This is where bitterness comes in. This is where you not having a good experience comes in. So remember what the example I was using earlier was in the context of an office, right? You getting a new job. This can absolutely also be applied in a cultural setting, in a setting where it's like someone experiencing their culture. They're excited to learn about the culture, all that stuff. They go through the different stages that Scarlett and I talked about. But now they're at the point where they're like, oh my gosh, like I've just been, giving to all these, family obligations. I'm just like, I don't even know, like, why are we even giving? What is even the point of doing these cultural things? Like, you're just at that point, okay? You're at the point where you just like, you feel, almost like indifferent about, experiencing your culture. And remember, when we say culture, we're talking about not just, your culture as in ethnicity. We're also it can be applied in like cultural setting, like at church, cultural setting at an office, just cultural setting anywhere, in your home, in your family, right? You're just at the point where it's just like your fatigue just keeps going up. You're not even interested anymore about making connections with people at your office place. It sounds like you're just settled. You're just like, ugh, really, really not a good place to be in. Scarlett, any questions or comments? Scarlett, you can go to the next slide.
Okay. Just one thing I wanted to say about this slide. This stage is usually like the crossroad or boiling point, and determines if somebody wants to continue to participate in any future event.
Yep.
Mhm.
And now we're at stage 5, which is burnout. Now, right here, right? So all of these different symptoms: stress arousal, denial, depletion of energy, withdrawal, exhaustion, self-neglect, feelings of emptiness and numbness. All of these different symptoms can be felt mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and culturally. Okay? Again, all of these different symptoms, you're pretty much burnt out. And you can't get any clearer than that. Burned out, right? All of these symptoms, like I said, can be felt mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and culturally. So physical withdrawal can look like now you're starting to isolate yourself. Right now you're starting to like, man, I'm starting to not go to church anymore, because it's just too much stuff going on at the church. They're asking for too much money. Now I'm starting to not go to church anymore. I'm starting to not go to my cultural stuff anymore. So that withdrawal, that isolation piece. Emotional can look like feeling empty. That's what I hear a lot of people say. I don't feel nothing. I feel empty, right? Mental exhaustion also can look like just this depletion of energy. You just don't have any energy, mentally exhausted. Sometimes your memory, it can be like just memory loss here and there. You're just constantly irritable. And you're not able to feel pleasure in anything, right? Emptiness and numbness can look like you're living on autopilot. You're not present. You're not able to fully participate in life. You feel more like a passive observer. That's what that feels like. Okay. So that's just I wanted to give an example of what these symptoms sort of look like. Again, this is not an exhaustive list of symptoms of burnout. There's a whole bunch, and depending on, people and how they feel them, but these are just some of the common ones across the board. Okay. Any questions or comments? If not, I'm going to keep moving.
I think just with burnout,
From Sina.
typically when our clients at Sol and I see, they're at this stage of burnout. And I think part of the emotional part of this is what I've seen with clients is like frequent crying, frequently crying and feeling isolated too. Is what I add to that. Yeah.
That's good.
Awesome. Any questions, comments before we go forward?
Yeah, just a quick question from Sina. A strong sense of duty can also play role, disillusion and apathy. I think it's on the Facebook comments.
Is that a question?
Strong sense, yeah, it's almost like just like a comment. Strong sense of
Okay.
duty can also play role in disillusion and apathy.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Mhm.
of course,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, question from how do you strike a healthy balance from Dr. Tui? How do you strike a healthy balance so you can participate without risking burnout? Are there any measures one can take or mental checklists of some sort one can use to check in with themselves if they don't get to the burnout stage? It's a good
And
question.
that's gonna be our next slide.
hmm And that is, I will take it from here. Self-care. So here we go, Dr. Tui, just for you, because you asked. So one of the self-care tips is setting realistic expectations. Think
Yes.
about how much time you can actually contribute to the cultural event and being okay with whatever that is, or whatever the culture, whatever culture that is hitting you at the moment. And so, for example, one of the things that you can ask yourself is, what is my capacity? Where am I at right now? How much time can I give? Can I give 1 hour? Can I give 30 minutes? Can I actually not do this day? Can I do another day? So that's one thing, is setting realistic expectations, because and it's not based on someone else's expectations, it's based on your need and what you can do for yourself. Next is make time. Please take time for your
Make the
overall
time.
well-being. Yes, you have to make time for yourself daily, daily. And it doesn't have to be a whole hour. I always talk with my clients, I just give me 5 minutes. That's all I need. And let's be consistent in the small. So again, choose a self-care activity that makes you feel replenished and rested. And if it's just sleeping and taking a nap, please do so. Whatever works for you. Use positive coping strategies to reduce the negative coping strategies. So like eventually I mentioned earlier about extreme eating, smoking, not getting enough sleep. So those, or getting little sleep. So those are some negative coping strategies. One of the things I know, especially about Pacific Islanders, we are highly talented and we can use a variety of arts. So some examples that I've talked about in here is like watching a funny movie, relaxing, taking a walk, painting, playing music, drawing, creating music, like whatever truly works for you. And we got DJ Una, so DJ some music, so whatever really works for you, because again, it's for you. And then next, share your thoughts and feelings with somebody who's safe. We talk, if you want to know how to identify those characteristic traits of emotional safety, please go back and watch the replay of our Know Your Feelings class, and that is on the King County Public Health YouTube playlist or journal, because
Can
we
I
have to
add
give.
to Scarlett
Go ahead.
when you're? I was
Yeah, go
gonna
ahead.
add, like, because I know, like, a lot of these things too. Scarlett and I are aware that a lot of these can seem foreign to our community members, right?
Mhm.
Because when we're talking about like setting realistic expectations, a lot of time we get into that duty and sense of obligation, or to the
Mhm.
extreme of that. And then we're thinking about other people. We're not thinking
Mhm.
about, ourselves. And so being able to, say, like, be intentional, right? Being
Yep.
intentional with setting those realistic expectations for yourself, right?
Mhm.
For yourself. Because a lot of the time, like, we were brought up to consider others first before us, right? So
Mhm.
when we're setting realistic expectations, you can start by setting those expectations for yourself. Because, like,
Mhm.
as Scarlett always talks about in our boundaries class, the
Mhm.
better you are as an individual, the much better it will be for other people around you. Because
Mhm.
when you're at your 100%, that's how much better you're able to take care of whatever it is that you are involved in. But if
Mhm.
I'm functioning off of, 50% or 40% energy, right? I that's me kind of still continuing to give, and I'm like, I'm not functioning at my capacity that I know I can function at, but I just continue to give more of myself. So I really like that, setting realistic expectations for yourself. And again, a lot of these are, we understand that it's like it's catered toward ourselves. Was I think a lot of time, like, we have to be get into the mindset of like, when we are taking care of ourselves, that's how much more better we can take care of our families and our communities.
Yeah. So I definitely want to say, like, because we even talk about in our boundaries class, the like, where does guilt and shame come from? And so you can watch the replay on YouTube. So please check out the What's Your Boundary class for sure.
And then more care tips, learn to say no to the things that you don't want to do, okay? Learn to say no. Learn to say no to things you don't want to do. And I know that's really, really hard for some people because a lot of us are people pleasers and, you know, but you have to consider the cost. What is this costing you? Right? So learn to say no. That's the most basic boundary setting word is no, to the things that you don't want to do, right? Tune into your body. You know, a lot of the times, our bodies are definitely keeping score of like what we are experiencing, what we are feeling, right? So for example, like, you know, if you're, like we always share this stat from one of the research, right? Like in our PI community, Asian American Pacific Islander communities, we're more in tune to describe to a physician like what we are feeling in our body versus describing our feelings. So we are more likely to say my stomach hurts. You know, I've been itchy over here this whole time, you know, like I've been having headaches. You know, we're more in tune to our somatic symptoms than we are to describing how we feel about things. So make sure that you're in tune to your body. I remember having a Pacific Islander client that was telling me, Manasala, I have headaches like every time I know that there's a family falabilabi or family, you know, funeral or something like that, I just get these massive headaches, you know, and I'm like, I think your body's trying to tell you something, you know, it seems like you're tense, you're stressed out, and this is your body's way of trying to tell you like, hey, pay attention, right? So tune into your body, right? Also, like if you're experiencing things like you're struggling to concentrate or you know, you just have this cold that you can't seem to shake, focus on that, get that checked out, see Dr. Tui, our
Tui in
amazing
Olympia.
Samoan, yes, amazing Samoan physician. By the way, quick plug here, our sister Tui, Dr. Tui, she is an amazing physician down in Olympia. She is Samoan, so please check her out if you get a chance. She's on social media, but just wanted to share a quick plug for our sister Tui. Also, respond from a place of your values. That's really, really important to be able to like implement your boundaries. When we do talk about boundaries, we always talk about how, you know, your boundaries come from a place of values. Like what is important to you? You know, so if paying your bills on time is, you know, because it's important to you because you got to put a roof over your kids' heads over here, that's important to you. So whatever, whenever your family, you know, ask you for money next time for something, what's more important to you, right? So focus on your values. So that's another big thing that we work through in therapy with our clients is identifying those values, because it's from that place of values we can start implementing healthy boundaries.
Just to add on to what Sala said, if one of the things what I teach with clients, if they can't just outright say no, is to also think about a different way of saying no is like, I'm not sure I can do that, but I can do this. I can't give this much time, but I can give this much time on this day. So that's one of the ways I practice with clients, and we come up with all kind of, you know, fill in the blank statements that they can utilize whatever fits it for whatever the thing that's being asked of them. And that's just a practice for them to, again, set a boundary for them. And again, responding from, like Sala was saying, a place of values for them. Because like I said, we've said before, like all of what we are talking about is how to continue to increase self-awareness so that you can better take care of yourself. So in the chat, somebody said, I believe it's CJ Uno, he said, true, I'm too nice. It's okay. Nothing wrong with being nice. And then Lupe had said, true, and we are not growing younger in these bodies. LOL, geez, thank you, ladies. You are absolutely welcome. So that concludes our community conversation for tonight. We want to thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you go to the Zoom chats or whatever chat, social media chat, there is the YouTube playlist. because we've done this series twice, so you can catch the fall one and you can catch the spring one. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Again, if you are also in the Zoom chat, I have put a copy of the summary of what tonight's conversation is. So we just want to thank you all for truly participating in this series, in this community conversation. We greatly appreciate it. Oh, also, please fill out the short survey. It won't take long. I'm telling you, it's less than 5 minutes. It's mostly just clicking. Okay. This actually helps us get more funding to continue to put on these community conversations from here on out. And so again, because we know how important this information is to give to our community, because like I said, you're not getting this information unless you actually see somebody like Sal and I in our office. And so we want to keep doing this for our community. So again, filling out that short survey truly does help us, because again, it helps us ask for more funding. So again, so that we can not only just do this once or twice a year, that we can do it throughout the year and years on out. So again, I want to thank you all for all that what you do, for being here. And again, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Sala and I. And then I'm going to, Sala, did you want any last words before I pass it on to Celie?
Nope, all
Awesome.
yours, Celie.
Awesome. Celie, floor is yours. Thank you all again.
Yeah, so on the Zoom and the Facebook chats, I threw the surveys. So as Scarlett mentioned, it's there. So it does help with funding. So this was funded through the Office of Equity and Community Partnerships. We hope to continue these conversations in 2024. And then in both chat box, I dropped down the playlist. Yeah, with that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for our last class. But it won't be the last time we see these amazing therapists. Are you guys taking clients currently? Yeah. So, I mean, look, if you're looking for, oh, Sala said no. I mean, so, so if you're looking for a therapist, their contact info is there too. So feel free to reach out. And with that, I just hope everyone has a great evening and thanks for joining us.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Recording
Thanks all.
stopped.
Scarlett, for the great time.